Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us at the live demo of MANTA Flow. Today, David Bryan. Hello, David.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. So David is our director of presales, and he will show you how MANTA's automated data lineage, how the platform actually works, how to configure the connections with various systems, and how it contributes to enabling DataOps. If you have any further questions during the demonstration, please put them into the chat and we'll make sure to answer them at the very end. And please know that this is not our full demo, but rather a quick overview of what you can expect. If you wish to have a full private demo, you may schedule it at getmanta.com. And that is all for the beginning, and I'll hand it over to David.
Thank you, Caroline. I really appreciate it. So I want to let everybody know what the agenda is going to be, what we're going to cover in probably 15 minutes. So real quickly, I'm going to go into an introduction to data lineage. This is just a brief introduction for those of you who may not be familiar with the term data lineage, why we use it, that type of thing. And then I'm going to go into how MANTA Flow creates data lineage. And by that, I mean that I'm actually going to show you the steps that are required in order for you to have your own data lineage generated against your system. I'm going to demonstrate the setup that's done in our administration system, and we'll actually create some lineage together. Then I'm going to talk about the challenges that you face when you create lineage. These are challenges that everyone will face, no matter how big or small the organization or exactly what you're trying to accomplish, things that you should be aware of as you proceed on that journey. And then I'm going to quickly jump into a full demonstration to show you the types of things that MANTA can do. And I'll be focused on impact analysis. And by impact analysis, I mean, if this particular element changes, what does it impact in my system? So that you can understand exactly what that change will do to your system. And the other focus that I will have is on what we call root cause analysis or sourcing of information. People typically think of this in conjunction with a report. So I'm looking at a report, maybe it's a financial report. I was working with an insurance provider the other day, and they said that at one point in their history, they had a financial report that they produced and published, and then they found out there was an error on the financial report. And in their words, the worst thing was that was embarrassing. It wasn't overly material so that it caused them major problems. But obviously nobody likes to produce a report then that explains an error on a previous financial report statement. And that's where they found themselves. So with sourcing analysis, you can click on a field in a report and MANTA will show you all the sources of information for that report. And if they'd had that, they would have been able to easily trace the sources of information, and they would have caught that corruption in time to fix it before that financial report went out. The other component that I'm going to focus on is looking at what's changed in your system. This is often very difficult in IT systems of today something doesn't work, but it worked yesterday. So what was introduced to the system that caused the piece that I'm interested in to break? It's one of the toughest things to find out because people rarely keep an archive of what their system looked like. So sometimes they have to go back and restore the entire system and then find out as they slowly introduce new pieces what caused the end item to break, because they don't know which pieces impact that end item. By looking at exactly what's changed over time in your system, you can have a much easier mechanism to do that type of analysis. So let me go ahead and jump in. First, the introduction to data lineage. Data lineage is what helps you understand how the data flows through your systems. So you're storing information in a Microsoft SQL Server table, and you have an Informatica Power Center job, or maybe more likely a SQL Server SSIS job that goes and pulls that information out of the table and writes it somewhere else so that it makes it easier to access from a report. Maybe it reformats it and puts it into a data warehouse so that your reporting system can report on it. So that's data flowing through your organization. MANTA provides you with that picture of that flow. Now, MANTA doesn't actually touch the data. MANTA is interested in the data structures and the objects that impact the data, that make the data flow to your organization. So we're analyzing the database table structures. We're analyzing views. We're analyzing stored procedures and functions, that type of thing, ETL workflows, report definitions, but we're not actually interested in touching the data. That makes MANTA a bit easier to implement from a security perspective in your organization. And the important thing that we're really after is getting to that actionable intelligence, allowing people to make changes quickly, facilitating agile development so that changes can be introduced on a regular basis, and you can have confidence that those changes are not introducing problems in your system. So how does MANTA achieve this miracle? Well, step one, we connect to the environment and we scan that environment. Now, we actually connect technology to technology. So you'll be responsible for identifying the technology that you're interested in scanning, providing the connection information to MANTA, and then executing that scan. And that's what step two is here, executing that scan. And then MANTA adds semantics to it. In other words, it parses the information and determines that this component is a transformation. And so I'm going to provide that as an expression when somebody looks at it. We'll color code it differently, make it easy to spot. We'll color code the technology resources differently so you can easily identify those. And that becomes the full accurate delivery of your lineage. Our goal is to provide end-to-end lineage. And what do I mean by that? I mean, one end is the source of the data, and the other is the target or the reporting, usually, of the system. Might be a dashboard, might be an end user report. Whatever that is, we're interested in being able to tie all of that together so graphically you see that image. So I'm going to show you step one and step two, and then we're going to really dive deep into step three. So let me go ahead and jump out and look at MANTA Flow. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. And this is the administrative component of MANTA. So as you go in and you set things up, you'll see the first thing that it asks you to do is add a connection. I have a number of different connections that I've already created over here, but I want to walk you through it so you can see the full administrative process. So I'm going to add a connection. In this case, I am interested in adding a database connection. And you can see that I simply pick out of the database list which one I'm interested in. You could have typed it in at the top if you were interested, but I'm going to add an Oracle connection. And now it's simply a matter of going through and filling in the blanks. To save us a bit of time and typing, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to one that I've already created under Oracle. And so here's my Oracle connection. It's very simple. The dictionary ID is something that you just make up. That's irrelevant. Then you simply tell the system what it is you'd like to scan. These excluded schemas are simply system level schemas that MANTA populates automatically, but you have control over that as well. And then the most important step is this JDBC connection, where you tell MANTA how to find the database so that it can go scan it. I'm going to show you the advanced setup as well. And in the advanced setup, you can see the ones that I've overridden, where I simply say, go out and extract the transformation logic. I'm very interested in that. I want you to use MANTA's dynamic SQL capabilities. I want you to pull in extended attributes, things like, is this a primary key? Is it a foreign key? Or does it have one of those? You can build transformation logic expression descriptions to make it easier for people to understand. So then you would simply save that connection. It validates the connection when you save it. And then you're ready to go to the next step, which is to go ahead and execute the process that goes out and extracts this. And so let's go ahead and do that. I've created a workflow here for you. MANTA's got a complete workflow manager built right into it. And you can see here that I've called this update Oracle, meaning update the Oracle lineage within MANTA. And I built this by simply going ahead, and I'll go ahead and click the edit button. But I built it by simply dragging and dropping the components that I was interested in. I picked the Oracle extraction component, since that's what I want to do. I picked the Oracle analysis component, since that's what I want to do. And this is dynamic. If I add other connections to Oracle, it'll go ahead and include this in this process for me. And I'm going to go ahead and not update that workflow. This API capability allows me to go ahead and execute it using an API. So if I'm programmatically trying to set up APIs to do this type of thing, I can test it right here. I'm just going to go ahead and execute the workflow. And what that does is it submits it to the process manager. And you can see that MANTA will continue to give you the status as the scan is performed. So we're going to go ahead and let this run. And I'm going to go back to the presentation and cover those pieces. And then we'll go see exactly what that run did, that scan. We'll take a look at what the impact of that was. So what makes lineage calculation and gathering very difficult to do? It's funny, a lot of people don't think that creating data lineage is that difficult, and they try to do it manually. I had a conversation with a major bank, actually somebody who had moved from one major bank to another, and he told me in his previous job, they had really needed data lineage. So they decided to hire a team of people to create the data lineage. They actually hired 100 people just to create their data lineage. That 100 people didn't do anything else. They manually created data lineage, and they were very successful in documenting their entire system's data lineage. It only took them 2 years. So if you can wait 2 years to get your results for your data lineage, that might be a good way to go. But there was one problem, and that's this rate of change. By the time they got to the end of the 2 years, the project wasn't over. They had documented everything, but unfortunately, development didn't stop. And they now had out-of-date lineage. So your lineage has to stay in date. It's also important to consider the level of detail that you want. To really make lineage important, or to make it useful, you need to have lineage that goes down to the column level. So you want column level, you want analysis of your programs, your stored procedures. And doing that is very technically challenging. I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead, talk about some of the key capabilities of MANTA Flow, the things that we handle and why they're important to you. First, fully automated. You don't want to have 100 people working for 2 years to come up with your lineage. So MANTA is fully automated, which will show with the scan and the results of it. And by the way, I'm doing a quick scan of a small area of our database. You shouldn't expect your entire information system to be scanned within 5 minutes. That's not going to happen. It's going to take a little bit more than that. We have a powerful API capability, and that API capability allows you to programmatically do all of the things that we're talking about today. So if you want to see what's changed in your system over time, if you want to see what's impacted, if you want to determine sources of information, you can do that programmatically. I had a customer who did that so that they could automate their release process. Whenever objects were changed, the programmers were responsible for feeding what items were changed into a program. That program would then call MANTA. MANTA would return all of the objects in their environment that were changed or impacted. I'm sorry, not changed, impacted. And then they would look up who owned each of those assets programmatically in their data catalog. And then they would initiate an email to all of the people who own those assets, asking them to be responsible for the specific change in testing that asset. And that way they were able to go ahead and facilitate their agile development. MANTA uncovers data transformation, makes all those transformations available to you. It processes conditional lineage. What's conditional lineage? Well, if you think of a system that is responsible for executing all the payments in your environment, that payment system likely has a file or a table of all of the people that it needs to send checks to. But it's not just people. It's people, vendor companies, contractors, all of those different payment people that you're going to execute against will be in a common party table, but with different types associated with them. Maybe employees are getting expense checks. Maybe the vendors are getting paid for delivering materials. So you need to understand what the types are. And based on the type, they may come from different sources, or they may be fed to different sources. Maybe the payments for employee expense checks are being fed into the payroll system, whereas the payments to vendors are being automatically distributed through electronic funds transfer. So it's better if your lineage can understand that conditional differentiation and draw accurate lineage for you. So when you're trying to find a problem, you don't waste time investigating unnecessary branches of the lineage. Historical lineage, I've already touched on. That's looking at lineage over time. How did it change over time? And you'll really see that in the demo. So let's go ahead and show you some of the companies that have invested in MANTA and have seen a tremendous return, improving their ability to handle their data operations, improving their ability to forecast their migration costs and their migration scope and efforts. A lot of these companies have invested in MANTA to help them in their move or transition to cloud-based technologies from legacy technologies. MANTA handles and scans both legacy technologies as well as cloud technologies, so we play an important role in that transition. So now I'm going to go ahead and jump to the demonstration, and let's go ahead and share that screen again. And you can see that that workflow completed. It ended up taking only a couple minutes. And so now we'll go ahead and jump over to the viewer so that we can go ahead and view all of our lineage. MANTA has a tight security, so I have to sign in again. You see on your left all of the technologies that you've scanned in your environment. I'm going to go ahead and start a journey by examining our customers report. And you see that that is an SSRS report, and you can select it by dragging and dropping it. I'm going to jump in with a low level of detail. And this way I can see right off the bat the end-to-end lineage. As I drag my screen over, and I'll go ahead and zoom out a bit, you can see the sources of information here on the left being fed into the processing engines. At the top here, I have SSIS. This is Informatica Power Center in blue. And then over on the right, I have a SQL Server database. This is a data warehouse that the information has been written into. And over here on the right-hand side, you see your customers report, which is where we started our journey. You can drill down at any time in any of these elements by simply clicking on this plus sign, or I can go ahead and change the detail all at once by going ahead and going to a medium level of detail. Now, if I go ahead and look all the way over here at the left-hand side of my lineage, you can see the sources of information. These are the 3 columns from this particular table that are source elements to that report that I'm interested in. I can jump back to the report that I started with by clicking on the center button. And you can see that your report has been exploded from just the single element now to all of the different components of the report. And if you click on any particular component, MANTA will give you the full sourcing of that particular element. As I zoom out with my mouse wheel so that I can see the full lineage, you can see that the source information for that table that we were looking at is now color-coded, so that the full name elements, or the sources of full name, are now highlighted in bright blue. So I didn't have to walk through the lineage step by step. I could actually jump from the end all the way back to the beginning to easily identify the source elements. Let's talk about impact analysis. So what's impacting full name? Or better said, what are the sources of it? And if I expand this source, then I can determine exactly the element that's creating the source. In this case, it's full name. If I click somewhere else, you can see the little TT. And the TT, first of all, the blue box we call an active tag, meaning that it actively goes out and finds information in your system. It tags it and makes it very easy for you to find as an end user. Notice that it displays that transformation for me. And if I click on full name, anything impacted downstream will be highlighted in bright red. Now I want to go ahead and jump and show you how you can compare what used to be in your system with what is currently in your system. Let's go ahead and go back to that customers report. And I'm going to go ahead and compare today's scan. And you can see the date and time up here when I created that scan. If you're in a different time zone, it may seem a little odd to you, but that's my time zone. And I'm going to go ahead and look at this comparison at a medium level. And I'm going to compare the 2 revisions, and I'm just going to go back and compare a previous revision for this customer's report. And when I visualize that, MANTA will show me that comparison. And notice that everything that's new is highlighted in green. And if I go over here to the left, you see an orange line, and that shows me that I have changes underneath that element. And by opening it up, I can see that the red elements have been deleted. As you can see here, that's the revision state. And the green elements are all new. So I can see that the sourcing for these 3 elements has changed from these 3 elements to these 3 elements. And I promised you I wanted to show you what the scan today added. So let's go look at that element in Oracle. And I happen to know that we added something to the rep client lineage. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that table. And I want to go ahead and jump in and look at everything that changed. And I'm simply going to compare today's revision with the revision that I had immediately prior to this. So we went from revision 18.19 today to revision 18.20. And as I visualize that change, we expect everything that's new to come up in bright green. And you can easily see by looking at the lineage that this bottom area is all new. All of the gray elements existed in our prior scan. And so I can very quickly see that somebody has added an additional source for customer names. So I would expect more names to be ending up downstream than used to be present before we added these components. So maybe I'm asking the question of why all of a sudden do we have all of these customers that we didn't expect on our report. So that's my summary today and the things that I wanted to show you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Carolina.
Amazing. Thank you very much, David. I think you nailed it. I think we summarized the most, I don't want to say the most important, but the very important features like impact analysis and rollback in time, which is the revision feature. There are many more that you could see. I think David could talk about them for many more hours. So if you're interested to see some more features in dedicated demo, you can easily schedule it at our website, which is getmanta.com. And we'll make sure to cover all the features you would like to know there. That would be it for today. Thank you very much and have an amazing day. Amazing day.
Thank you, everyone.